All right, welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. The situation in Ukraine's capital getting worse by the minute. As we pull up the shot of Kiev, we've been hearing heavy fighting and explosions being reported all around the capital city in Ukraine. As Russian troops have now encircled the city, we've heard all day long that the battle for Kiev would be happening tonight. Ukraine's president earlier today indicating the fate of his nation would be determined tonight. It's 5 o'clock in the morning in Kiev. This is around the time that we've always seen, the last couple nights, we've seen the fighting really pick up. It's when it started on the first night, which was a couple nights ago. Last night it was about the same, and there have been a lot of explosions just off of this general camera here. You can hear, at times, you can hear a lot of gunfighting, machine guns, that kind of activity. You can hear that on that camera. We have never heard it off of that camera before. A major development, though, tonight, and some good news. Ukraine's military has said it shot down a transport plane carrying 150 Russian paratroopers that were trying to storm their capital city. There's also potentially going to be maybe some kind of meeting in the works between the leaders of Russia and Ukraine as well. There's a lot of things happening tonight we're going to get to over the next 2 hours. But first, we're going to go to Sarah Williamson, who is live there on the ground in Kiev tonight. Sarah.
Yes, good evening, Rob. That situation in Kiev at the moment is rather frightening. We're actually just outside of Kiev at the moment, just about half an hour south of the city. And what you are hearing from inside the city on that camera, that live stream that you were showing, is a lot of sporadic fighting that has been happening throughout the night. It's mostly small arms fire that has been going on, most coming from the northeast of the city. That's the direction that we're hearing. Small arms fire and grenades that have been going off as the Russian troops mostly try and push their way into the city. We've heard no heavy artillery at any stage throughout the night. And the defenders are doing a very, very good job at fighting off the ambushes that these troops, whenever they try and push their way in, they haven't managed to do so as of yet. That's why we're still only hearing really a lot the small arm fires and the grenades so far. That plane that you were speaking of, that is coming from the direction where we're hearing from an airport that is about 30 kilometres south of Kiev. There is still a lot of heavy fighting that is going on in that direction at the moment. That's been ongoing all night. That plane was an IL-76. It is a cargo plane that can hold up to 600 troops. And the fighting is still being ongoing in that area at the moment as well. So that is still a major area of contention at the moment there, that airport and the situation in Kiev at the moment as well. So they are still doing a very good job at keeping the defenders off at the moment, but we're still only hearing small arms fire and grenades at the moment. No heavy artillery has made their way into the capital as we speak. Rob?
Okay, Sarah Williamson live for us, trying to keep the lights down. We can see there about a half hour south of Kiev she is. Thank you so much, Sarah. We will check back in with you, of course, as this night could get very interesting here at any time. Again, the president of Ukraine thinks that the fate of his country all lays in what happens tonight. And you recall that Vladimir Putin, when they first went in, Russia was under the impression this would be about a 48-hour process of taking the capital and taking control of the country. Well, we're at 48 hours right now, almost to the nose, about 48 and a half hours. President Zelensky saying today that Putin plans to move in for the kill tonight. Let's go ahead and take a listen to him.
Russia will try to break our resistance with all its might. Tonight, the enemy will begin storming us. We need to withstand them.
It's a brave guy right there. There are a lot of questions tonight about what Vladimir Putin, though, has exactly gotten himself into and how far this man is willing to go. It seems clear Putin thought that taking Ukraine would be a swift action. He may have thought Ukraine's government would flee. The president would just run out of the country. That's what happened in Afghanistan when the Taliban moved in. He may have thought that the military, knowing it was beaten simply by the sheer size of the enemy, would just lay down arms. And as we know now, that hasn't happened. There's no indication that that will happen. And suddenly the Russians are faced with a very real possibility of fighting their own family. That's how Putin describes the people of Ukraine, after all, right? They're his family. They're his family living under a fake government that was never meant to be, and he wants to bring them back into the family of Russia. That's how Putin puts it. So is Putin willing to slaughter his own people, is the question. He's certainly a cold and calculated former KGB agent with no regard for the life of his enemies or his dissidents, but is he a total monster? Maybe he doesn't realize what he's gotten himself into here. Maybe this was a miscalculation. We'll see about that. Earlier this morning, the Kremlin said that Putin was ready to send a delegation to Belarus for peace talks with the Ukrainians. Zelensky also agreed and wanted to discuss a ceasefire. And we haven't heard a lot about it since, as they're maybe trying to work out date and time. You'd think it would have to happen fast. But it did seem like a great chance for an off-ramp for Vladimir Putin and the Russians, who maybe bit off a lot more than they expected, maybe having second thoughts about what they've gotten themselves into. And don't want to look weak, but maybe can look like they've won if they get this list of demands right here. Recognizing Crimea as Russian, rejecting NATO completely and forever. Ukraine can have no more weapons from the West. He effectively wants to demilitarize Ukraine. And also redrawing the borders of the so-called LNR and DNR regions in the far east of Ukraine, which is that Donbas area, to pre-2014 borders. Now, whether or not that's acceptable to Zelensky is another question. Obviously, demilitarizing sounds like a terrible idea, because once they get rid of all their weapons, then Russia could just come in at any time and it would be completely bloodless. They could just take it over at any moment. There's no military. The other option, though, at this point, is a bloody war that could end in a slaughter. And that's what we're seeing right now, the beginnings of that. In the meantime, Putin today also issuing a threat to Finland and Sweden. Here's the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman translated to English.
Finland and Sweden should not base their security on damaging the security of other countries, and their accession to NATO can have detrimental consequences and face some military and political consequences.
So back here at home tonight, Biden taking off for Delaware. I don't know why not just go to Camp David. Why not stay at the White House? No idea. Great optics. But at this point, the involvement of that man is not needed. That's how marginalized this country has become in this process. That's how small we are right now under that guy's leadership. The White House is not leading. They're just following whatever Europe does at this point. They did it with Germany and the pipeline. They did it again today, introducing sanctions against Vladimir Putin after getting all that pushback. Why aren't you doing more with sanctions? And then Biden said, well, sanctions don't really do anything. And the worst press conference you ever saw. Now, the EU and the UK move first. They're leading on the subject. And they issue sanctions against Vladimir Putin himself and Lavrov. This happening, and here comes the United States coming from behind. A completely different president on the other side of the world, though, Ukraine's leader, Zelensky, saying he's not leaving and putting out a video showing that he's still in Kiev and he and his government are not going anywhere. I love this video. Take a look.
Good evening, everyone. All of the heads of state are here. The chief of staff is here. The prime minister is here, and the president is here. We are all here, and we are here to defend our independence. We are here in Kiev. We are defending our country. Long live Ukraine.
Obviously translated there, as you can tell. You have amazing people in that country. It's just fantastic to see people that love their country so much and so much bravery. I don't know if there's another place on earth like it. Thousands of the men in that country taking up arms to defend their land, and it's been astonishing to see the videos. And you've seen women, you've seen grandmothers, middle-aged women with rifles ready to defend Ukraine. We told you last night about a pair of Ukrainian boxing legends who also happen to be brothers. One of them is the mayor of Kiev on the left. Both have vowed to stay in Ukraine and fight. They're not leaving. And then there's the story of the so-called ghost of Kiev, which is a fantastic story. A Ukrainian fighter pilot credited with downing as many as 6 Russian jets in this 2-day skirmish. Some saying it was just a myth. Well, the former president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, tweeting out a picture right there of the pilot today, verifying it to everybody that wanted to know. That's the ghost. The rumors are true. It appears he really does exist. And he's a hell of a pilot. It's awesome. Taking down 6 Russian jets, doing some real damage. Another remarkable story, a Ukrainian Marine. Watch the screen, watch the flash. You're about to see it, about 5 seconds. Ukrainian Marine blowing himself up to destroy a key bridge being used by the Russians to get across a river. There it was, the end of that man's life. He dies a hero. According to the military's Facebook page, the Marine apparently had very little time to escape advancing Russian troops. He told his commanders he was going to detonate on the bridge to take the bridge out. Gives you chills, it really does. But there is a lot of frustration in that country, and it's all due, as you might expect, to so much utter incompetence coming from the West. The United States, Europe, the sanctions that we've talked about have not met the moment at all. There are reports that the Italian Prime Minister, Mario Draghi, has been pushing to keep Italian luxury goods out of the discussion for sanctions. And the Belgians apparently don't want diamonds to be involved either. So you have nations like this afraid to upset their oligarch clients because there's so much money in Russia that they squeeze out of that country. They keep it all at the top. Nobody else gets any of it. And then they spend it buying yachts and houses all over the world and clothes and all the other BS that these fools think they need. And you have countries like this that are worried they're not going to be able to sell their diamonds or their Italian clothing. Ooh, my Gucci shoes. How am I going to sell my Gucci shoes in Italy? To these Russian scumbags who've enriched themselves by starving the Russian people. And in turn, they're emboldening a maniac to take over another country. Mario Draghi, right there. Well done. The United States admitting yesterday that the sanctions would not affect Russian energy into Europe. We showed you the press conference at the White House, just saying, yeah, we're not going to mess with Europe's energy on this thing. That is how Russia is financing this entire operation, by all the liquefied natural gas that it's selling throughout Europe and some oil as well. They're taking all that money and they're paying to torture people in Ukraine, take over their world, kill innocent people. Can you even imagine a level of foreign policy incompetence like this? We're getting used to it, right? Are you through watching your country behave so stupidly? And this is not just this country. This is both sides of the Atlantic. This is what we've let happen to the West. Our leaders are embarrassing, and it's no wonder Putin thinks he can walk all over the West. The West is an embarrassment. Imagine sitting in that NATO meeting, listening to all of these bureaucratic clowns talk, because that's all they've done their whole life is talk. They've never done anything. They have no street smarts. All they know how to do is get elected and then BS their way through everything. As they put forth a half-assed effort to save the Ukrainian people from being slaughtered by Putin, as they put it, as they try to sell it to you. And then the Italians start complaining about their oligarch shoe sales, and Europe is more worried about the hassle of canceling a contract for liquefied natural gas from Russia. We have to find another person to give us our natural gas. We don't want to do that. So let's just keep paying Vladimir Putin, who's on the verge of potentially starting a world war. These are the people that are running the West. It's astonishing. And we've seen it for years. Angela Merkel, another idiot. Macron, fools all around. Biden fits right in the club. Want to know why they hated Trump so much? Because Trump was the only person that had a real perspective. He didn't live in their fantasy land of BS. And at the end of the day, it's not surprising. We've watched the Western elites take us down this road for years, and that's exactly how Trump won in 2016. People were sick of career political incompetence. Career politicians that had no idea what they were doing, that had never been in the real world, that had just lived in universities and think tanks and then gotten into politics, have no repercussions because they insulate themselves from all of the nonsense that they push, that they pass in their countries. And now in 2022, with common sense gone in this country, the idiocy is back and it's even more pervasive, and the consequences this time could be disastrous. Our American foreign policy experts, as they call themselves, shared their Russia intelligence with the Chinese. Oh, hey, look at what we found out Russia's doing. You guys don't know Russia, do you? You don't know them, right? You wouldn't say anything, would you? They show the Chinese Russia's troop buildup around Ukraine, and to nobody's surprise, China takes it all right over to Russia and says, hey, look what the Americans showed us. The White House with yet another embarrassment. Yet another embarrassment. About the 1,000th one in the last 350 days was asked about it today.
All I'm saying is that every country should think about what side of history they want to be on here.
Ooh, yeah. No, bad China. Why'd you do that? China made them look like idiots, and they are idiots. We are being led by idiots. And it's so clear in this moment.